guys. Welcome to another Sunday, another story time. I hope everybody had a really good Thanksgiving. I know I am completely stuffed. I ate way too much turkey and I still have plenty of turkey left over, so that's always a blessing. I love doing the week-long leftovers afterwards, and I tend to always make so much turkey that I can go almost an entire week afterwards without having to cook. So I succeeded in that goal and had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And me and the kids decorated the whole house. We got our Christmas tree up. We got our decorations all around the living room. So Christmas has officially puked all over our house, which is great. And it was fun to just spend a little time with the kids and enjoy just doing family stuff. So even though it was a homebound Thanksgiving for us, it was still absolutely wonderful. And frankly, I think it was probably one of the best Thanksgivings we've had. So I hope you guys have had an equally good Thanksgiving and everyone is safe and happy after the holiday. If you guys did Black Friday shopping, I hope you guys were safe. I hope you got everything you wanted. And if you did online shopping, hopefully you made all the sales too. So this has been a big weekend for everybody, but it is Sunday. It is my favorite day of the week because I get to read with you guys. And I love the fact that you guys come here and watch every Sunday. So let's get started. We are on chapter 22 and 23 today since they're kind of small. So let's jump right on in. Chapter 22. After about 24 blissful hours of normalcy, Sage almost felt like her old self, but that all ended when Devin called her to come down to his gym. Daylight somehow felt safe, though deep down Sage knew that wasn't true. Creatures of magic existed in all shapes and sizes, but only vampires had issues with the light. Still, she welcomed the fresh air and sunlight as she strolled towards Devin's gym. A sign on the door read closed, but she peered inside, spotting new faces she'd never seen before. Sage knocked and waited for him to magically appear like he'd done so many times before. He opened the door slowly, his face tightening as his eyes met hers through the plate glass. "Before I let you in, I need your word you'll listen and do as I ask." Something up? He'd called her down here. Why the sudden subterfuge? Devin stepped aside and let her in. "I've called some of my personal friends. They're good people, but the presence of a Terra might make them nervous." "Oh, I'm not one of them," she said arrogantly. The people of the Vegas asset group had already shown their true colors. No way in hell was she claiming to be party to their nonsense. "Your word, please." He took hold of her arm before she could pass completely through the doorway. Yes, okay, I'll be good." The moment she crossed the threshold, Sage felt as if she'd been put on display. The assembled group regarded her curiously, but rather than look at her face, they looked to her arm, to her birthmark. Would there ever be a day when that wasn't the first thing that people saw about her? "Terras are the peacekeepers," Devin lowered his voice. "So, in a way, you're a party crasher?" She finished the sentence, knowing exactly what he meant. No one invites the cop to a party when they know something illegal might be going down. To put it mildly. A lopsided grin cracked Devin's stony expression, and he released her. "I'm here to learn," she said loud enough for the others to take note, "not to condemn people I know nothing about." Outing yourself as a newbie might not be smart either. Devin put a hand on her back. "This is Sage. She's my charge for the moment. Her mother's light was extinguished quite recently, and she's a refugee of the recent attack on A.S.S.E.T. From the doorway, it looked like an AA meeting. Chairs were arranged in a circle, and people were taking their seats, drinking coffee. There were 2 women and a man in attendance so far, but more chairs sat empty, one for Sage, one for Devin, and at least one more. With his hand pressing gently on her back, he guided her towards the group. At first glance, they looked as bland as any people she'd have passed on the street, but the closer she came to them, Sage realized that they weren't people at all. Not in the normal definition, at least. None had moved nor made any visible attempt to alter their appearance, but as quick as blinking, their appearance shifted, leaving something completely different sitting in its place, sipping coffee. Every one of them changed by the time she'd made it to the empty seat. The group had become creatures, the kind she'd not yet learned the names for. Sage had learned the name, excuse me, Sage had learned the name of this type of change, though, glamour. These were the beings of active magic. Finally, she might have a chance to see her for herself what all the fuss was about. One woman who at first glance, man, I'm just tripping left and right. One woman who at first glance looked like a librarian with a messy bun of dark brown hair and vintage-looking horn-rimmed glasses had shrunk down so much that she hardly stood taller than her mug of coffee. "You're new, then." The petite lady sprouted wings and flew up eye level with Sage to greet her. Her skin gave off a luminescent rosy glow, but her eyes were pure amethyst. "I'm sure we're all a sight to you, aren't we?" "You are absolutely gorgeous," Sage replied in earnest, admiring the way that her delicate wings fluttered with the speed of a hummingbird at her back. "Thank you." The winged creature smiled and lowered herself in a bow. "Call me Nyx." Devon leaned into her ear and whispered, "She's an ethereal. You might know her kind as a pixie or a sprite. They can manifest things with magic." Sage made a mental note, comparing what she had read to what sat right in front of her. Try as she might, there was no way to hide her excitement at being in the presence of real magic. It added a much-needed perspective to all that had happened over the last few days. She turned to her left, where a man with green-gray skin sat. He had an ageless quality to him that made it hard for her to guess how long he'd been around. Slits flapped at his neck. Gills, perhaps? Though they weren't in water, and his chest still rose and fell as if he were breathing. She held out her hand in greeting. "I'm Sage. Nice to meet you." He took her hand with a curt nod. "Karn." She leaned over to Devon. "Aquaman?" Karn responded. "If that makes it easier for you to understand, yes." Another woman, much taller than the pixie, with hair and skin that blended into the shadows, floated rather than stood in front of her. The whites of her eyes contrasted so sharply that they demanded to be looked at, but as Sage tried to look at her, she flickered in and out of focus as if she were a hologram with bad reception. "Sylvia," the woman introduced herself. Her image shifted and settled back like a black cloud. "Shadowrunner." "Nyx," Devon interrupted the introductions. "Can you set up a perimeter?" "I'd like to be alerted if anyone tries to use magic in... Try again. I'd like to be alerted if anyone tries to use magic into the... Why can't I talk today? Oh my goodness. I'd like to be alerted if anyone tries to magic their way into this meeting." The sprite fluttered around the room. At each corner, she threw out a handful of sparks, and glorious colors of shimmering specks joined together to form a magic wall. Like liquid made to stand upright, once all the pieces had formed, the occupants of the room were encased in their own personal bubble. Sage's mouth hung open stupidly as she admired Nyx's handiwork. "You can all see that, can't you?" Devon asked. He, too, looked around, but his expression didn't hold the same level of wonder. "Can't you? It's gorgeous." Sage held her hand out and let her fingers skim the edges of the magical barrier. Smooth to the touch, like a delicate skin of water on the surface of a lake, but when she penetrated, she found only air on the other side. She shoved her hand through and back again without popping the bubble that was encasing them, nor causing so much as a ripple on the surface. "You're magic neutral, remember?" Devon came up and put his hand out, but where she was able to puncture the bubble, his hand stopped short, finding the barrier impenetrable. "You can see the magic as it's used, but none of it affects you." She nodded stupidly, still fingering the edges of the barrier. Nyx fluttered by, giggling, and tossed a shower of glittering magic around her. "Have you never truly seen magic used?" Sage twirled as the shimmers danced around her, falling slowly as new snow at her feet. "What is this?" "A parlor trick for you. Magic can't hurt you." Her tone sharpened. "But if I threw so much as a single speck at Devon, he'd be on his knees begging me to end his suffering." Sage sucked in a breath and looked to her trainer. He didn't flinch nor show any sign of fear. "Is that meant to scare me?" she asked the pixie. Nyx giggled again and fluttered away. "Pretty things are often the most deadly," Devon answered. She read the message loud and clear. Reining in her amusement, Sage set her jaw, pulling her lips in tightly, and claimed one of the unused seats for her own. Are we ready to talk now? Sylvia asked. When she spoke, her form solidified, and for a brief moment she looked every bit a woman ready to hit the runway in a flowing gown of ebony gauze. But the moment her words trailed off into silence, her form evaporated into black clouds, floating a few inches above the ground. Yes, Devon returned to the group to claim his seat. Whether they have affected you or not, I'm sure you've all heard the rumors floating around about A.S.E.T. Not rumors, Sylvia snapped into focus. The vampire coven was directly attacked by them. Too bad we don't have any one of their representatives here to respond to that, Karn replied. Perhaps you should have called this meeting in the evening then. We don't need them. Sylvia hovered around the group, circling slowly. Sage noted the unease that passed around in her wake. She remembered the dream she'd had and the floating shadows that killed by simply passing through their enemy. As Sylvia floated towards her, Sage found herself holding her breath and praying the innate neutrality would protect her if need be. I'm close with the vampire covens in Northtown. They're all but decimated, and those who've come forward to say it was the ones bearing the mark who attacked them? Devon shook his head. He pointed a finger to his lips, but rather than shushing Sylvia, it seemed as if he were stopping himself from saying something. To be clear, Nyx asked, the mark of a Terra, the tree of life? Sylvia rounded on the pixie, and they met each other at eye level. Is there any other race that bears a special mark? Do you know what happened during the attack? Devon blurted out. What weapons were used? Silver? Stakes? 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 Nyx scoffed, fluttering lower to hover at Devon's level. I'm trying to gather information. Really, Kat? Really? Can you guys hear that? Somebody's demanding attention right now. Stakes? Nyx scoffed, fluttering lower to hover at Devon's level. I'm trying to gather information. If the Terras were responsible, then it would have to be a weapon. Devon defended his words, but remained calm where he sat. Their magic was taken, and they all died a final death, Sylvia responded. Death is not the end, nor is it final, for the leeches who steal their magic. The mother and father bound us in their blood, and when spilled, it returns to the earth where it first granted life. Karn spoke as reverently as a priest giving a sermon. Spare us your fervor for the mother and father, Nyx flitted around above everyone's heads. Soft, snickering sounds made it seem as if she were laughing, but no one responded angrily to her. They turned their backs on us ages ago, leaving the precious Terras our keepers. Sage held her tongue. Responding to that bait would earn her no friends. Parents teach their young by allowing them mistakes and seeing if they learn. Never have they wavered in their care for us. The Terras were but another lesson. Have we learned? Perhaps not. Karn spoke his words, looking directly at Sage, though they were clearly meant for Nyx. What exactly is this weapon rumored to be? Devon asked. That we don't know, Sylvia replied. Those who were there all died. And who is said to have used this weapon? Devon continued his line of questioning. Well, the Terras, of course. Sylvia threw the accusation like a dagger, slicing sharply in Sage's direction. Terras only act in response to crimes, Devon responded. No crimes have been committed. Sylvia turned her deadly gaze towards him. Our city has been at peace. Terras don't need reasons to show off their muscle. Nyx's giggle had a sinister edge to it, unnerving the way she sounded so sweet, and at the same time, Sage understood the pixie was about as deadly as a shadow looming at her back. They only need targets. You guys don't like them very much, do you? Sage asked. We don't like others interfering in our affairs, Nyx answered. Terras are the lesson from our great mother, the folly of our ego, and a warning that should be heeded lest we summon the gods back and invite their wrath. Karn was the only calm voice in the room, but his words felt as if they were stronger than anything the angry ladies had spoken. A.S.E.T, on the other hand, flexes their muscles with as much ego as our people. They must learn the lesson as well. The folly in their ego could someday, too, bring about the wrath of our great mother. Sage tried to recall the passage she'd read in Devon's books. The mother was supposed to have saved the last fruit from the tree of life, but before she could open her mouth to say as much, Sylvia jumped in. Terras ensure we're all aware of their power. Simply leaving them out of things can be seen as a crime. Not true. Gray's voice startled the assembled group. Nyx changed form, her pink tone burning brighter into a deep crimson as she grew twice her size. She held her hands out, and 2 glowing spheres of light began to form at her palms. Peace, peace, Gray held his hands up in surrender. I come in peace, guys. He walked into the gym as if he owned the place, passing through the barrier Nyx had created as if it were nothing but air. A.S.E.T holds the fragile peace in our community together. Who invited him? Sylvia shrieked. This is a trap. Devon held up his hands, jumping to take position between himself and Sylvia. No trap. Gray, what are you doing here? I came to talk to you about Sage, but I see you have already taken her under wing. Gray kept his hands up, standing his ground. I'm not here to attack. I'm trying to do as you are, to find out what caused the attack on A.S.E.T. Devon and Sage exchanged glances. She'd already told him off once. Gray had revealed himself to be underhanded, using dirty methods to get his way. But as she opened her mouth, Devon interrupted her. Let him talk. Gray might have information useful to us. We should hear from the Terras if they're being accused. You can't trust him. He used a vampire to trick me, Sage protested. It was Zach, Gray offered in defense. We all know how harmless he is. Devon chuckled. True, he's got a point there. Gray strolled up beside Sage. I'm not going to apologize for anything I've done. I had my reasons, so hate me all you want. Sage's lip curled as she balled her fist, ready to strike. He deserved at least that for the way he'd manipulated her and put her in harm's way. And to the rest of you, Gray addressed the room, I do want to know what's causing this uprising because it puts all of our people at risk. How dare he pretend to be so noble to the others while he shows her nothing but disrespect? Her knuckles went white with strain, holding her hands clenched. But she couldn't throw the punch, no matter how much she wanted to. It would only serve to make her look bad. She'd give him what he was owed soon enough. Sylvia floated towards Gray. Your people have pushed too far this time. What have we done? He asked. You have a great weapon. You laid waste to an entire coven over nothing, Sylvia replied with spite. How? Gray asked calmly, meeting her eyes. Where are the bodies? Where are the spent ammunition shells? Where were the signs of a fight? You say my people did it. What proof do you bring? They were turned to ash, Sylvia replied. Fire, then? Gray confirmed. Why have I heard of no reports of arson in the news? Not a fire. Their light was extinguished, their magic taken back, leaving them as dust in the wind. That silenced the room. What you claim is a weapon of magical origin, Gray answered back loudly and slowly, leaving no excuse for any in the room to say that they didn't hear his words. If the weapon was of magical origin, my people couldn't use it. He held up his arm, bearing the symbol of the Great Tree of Life. If it were anything else, there would be evidence. Nyx fluttered around, shifting between colors as she circled the group. Sylvia, too, silently hovered as if contemplating what she just learned. The boy speaks truth, Karn broke the silence. When the great gods created our people, we were all blessed with magic, but the mother denied her children, the Terras. They were created to oppose magic. Then we have to ask ourselves 2 questions. Devon collapsed back into his chair. What is this weapon supposed to be? And more importantly, who's using it? 3, Sage added, drawing attention from everybody in the room. Why are the Terras being blamed for it? Chapter 23. Terras are the great weapon, Karn offered, pulling out a book from a satchel under his chair. He opened it and searched through its pages. From the great tree, the mother and father brought forth fruit that held within its power to neutralize the magic-fueled war threatening to destroy the world she and the father had created. Neutralize, but not annihilate, Gray countered. Balance, yes, Karn responded mechanically as he continued to page through the book. A.S.E.T is not about balance. It is control and manipulation. Nyx landed on her chair in a huff. Who's to say they haven't employed others to do their dirty work? A.S.S.E.T doesn't have any magical employees. Sorry, let me change that. A.S.S.E.T does have magical employees. I don't know how I missed that. Sylvia planted a hand on her hip and glared at Devon. Lackeys who do their bidding willingly. Sage hadn't considered that. Terras might not be able to use magic, but if they employed people, like her trainer, who was to say they didn't have other magical creatures in tactical positions? We don't have lackeys. We work with the magical community. We're peacekeepers. Gray tensed, twitchy muscles flexed as he brought his hand up to his coat as if preparing for a fight. Sage knew that he used machete-length blades and that he had both since arriving. Chances were that he had them under the stupid leather duster, along with who knows what else. Blades were the weapon of choice for the Terras, and Gray had certainly shown his proficiency with them, beheading her mother. How quickly could he unsheath them if things went sour? She'd seen enough blood to last a lifetime and prayed to whatever gods that might be listening that this meeting would not end with more death. Peacekeepers? Nyx scoffed. Her open hostility towards Gray spoke volumes about the interaction that she'd had with Terras, or perhaps just with A.S.S.E.T in the past. The man reaching for a weapon wants me to believe he's no threat. She fluttered up to eye level with Gray, and her skin shifted color again, glowing into a vibrant blue. Violence is at the core of your being. To his credit, Gray remained still and kept his blades sheathed, even as the blue pixie creature hovered close enough to strike him. Terras are no better than any of us, Nyx sneered, and yet somehow they gain dominion. Balance. Korn shocked everybody with the sudden volume of his reply. Not dominion. They have iron and steel where we have magic. His voice held power. Sage imagined him like a great wizened wizard speaking truth to the masses with no hint of animosity to either side. Nyx's side remained quite clear in her haughty retort. Too bad we can't hurt them. Punch him, Devon replied. He'll feel the blow. Devon moved to Gray's side, as if he wished to act as a spotter. Sage didn't like the direction things were taking, openly inviting violence. Devon, however, gave no inch. I can talk, I can read, I really can. Devon, however, gave no indication of worry. Cut him. He'll bleed. A great deal more than you, I'd wager. Sylvia floated up alongside Gray, too. 2 on 2, each side within striking distance, as if they were chess pieces moving in for a checkmate. Sage held her breath as Sylvia's body turned to vapor. She sent her wispy smoke-like form through Gray's chest. Gray sucked in a breath as if expecting pain and squeezed his eyes shut. Sylvia passed through him as his breath released, and her body again took its human shape. Gray remained standing, his breathing a little quicker, but no worse for wear. Sage waited in stunned silence, knowing how deadly and quick Gray could be. Sylvia had stepped over the line with her demonstration. He would be well within his rights to react, yet, to his credit, he didn't. With tension mounting, how much more would he allow before retaliating? He's immune to my abilities, Sylvia turned her anger back to Devon. Therefore, not equal. There is no balance. You can steal someone's life with a touch, and you want to argue that someone being immune is not balance? Devon asked. I'm not immune. I could easily be bent to your will with the mere threat of your power, as many were in the dawn of time. Powerful magic requires a powerful solution. He jabbed a finger at Gray. And all his people got was immunity. Sylvia evaporated, and for a moment Sage thought she had left the conversation. But a moment later she reappeared across the room, floating in a circular pattern as if pacing. Nyx still hovered close enough to pose a threat, but her skin had cooled, turning a light shade of lavender. It was probably best to keep her on the lighter side of the color spectrum. Sage and Gray might be immune to magic's touch, but they were the only two in the room. As for what people working within A.S.S.E.T, yes, Devon said. I work to help train their agents, but I'm not privy to anyone outside of my gym. All magical personnel are limited. Only Terras are assigned to field work. Gray lowered his hand back down to his side. And we agents of A.S.S.E.T swear an oath to fight for peace, to use force only when necessary. As did the first Terras. Karn pointed a finger at the book that he'd been looking through and began to read. I am rooted in the earth that bore me. Blood of the ancient magic runs through my veins. The mother's light has blessed me, and I am ready to take my place in the great cycle. As the mother has shared her light, I will share it and spread her glow around the earth. As the mother has given her blood, I will protect the blood from being spilled. As the mother has shown patience, I will not be quick to judge. As the mother has punished her children, I will punish those who break her laws. As the mother has forgiven, I shall remember temperance and mercy when punishing others. As the mother has buried her children, I shall remember the great cycle of life ends. As the mother has made me her soldier, I and those who follow in my bloodline shall follow her orders from now until the end of time. Not exactly the oath we say, but that sounds about right, Gray agreed. Terras are so noble, Sylvia scoffed. Karn stood and held his book to read. The mother offered the fruit of her great tree in peace to those who would have it. Once tasted, their lust for war was quenched by its sweet juices. They ate the fruit whole, leaving not one seed to fall back to the earth. And after consuming the fruit, those who had once been at war found they'd lost the magic that had fueled their desires for power and superiority. The fruit took away their magic, Sage said, remembering the passage that she had read in Devon's book. Karn cleared his throat, silencing the room before continuing. Fearing they would be vulnerable to their brother's power, one by one they fell to their knees, begging for the mother to restore them. She made them each swear this oath, and they and their children and their children's children in perpetuity would be bound to the mother until the end of time. As a symbol of their agreement, each was branded with the image of the tree, a reminder of the oath they swore, and a way for the mother to know her people. So long as the oath was honored, they wouldn't need to fear their brothers. And we don't, Gray said casually. We still honor the oath we swore as peacekeepers. Sage snorted. You got a funny way of honoring things. She'd meant to say it under her breath, but he'd heard her. You still blame me for your mother, Gray turned on her. She was dark. Her light had been extinguished. I didn't kill her. I saved you from her. And using a vampire to bait me into joining you? She threw at him. Was that saving me too? Would you have rather I kidnapped you, forced your compliance, or was showing you what threats might be out there really that underhanded? He replied. She had no defense. His methods left a lot to be desired, but even she had to admit that he'd done them with good intentions. She'd still punch him in his stupid face before long, though. Whatever, you're a Boy Scout. We should all learn from your example. What we should do is stop squabbling amongst ourselves. Devon cleared the air with his booming voice. Karn has pointed out that perhaps there's a link between the fruit from the tree of life and whatever this weapon may be. Fruit would rot. Karn closed the book. But the seeds within, those could have been preserved. The book you gave me said something about the mother saving some of the fruit in case she needed the powers again, Sage offered. Gray held up a finger. She could see the wheels turning in his expression as if he knew something but wasn't quite sure of what to say. The book speaks to the juice of the fruit, quenching the lust for war. It could stand to reason that the seeds were what actually took away the power. Karn nodded thoughtfully. Like a sponge, Gray finally said, his eyes growing wide with newfound realization, though his words had been oddly chosen. Not long ago, he winced, as if struggling for words. Sage could almost see smoke rising from his ears as he gathered the power to run his Neanderthal brain. I remember a code word. Sponge. It had to do with an artifact bound for the European archives a week or so ago. It came through our office with a special team. So you admit to using it, Sage hissed at him from across the room. Are you listening? We can't use it, Gray roared back. I've never seen it, though, but I do remember heightened security as it was scheduled to pass through our office. He turned to Sage. Your mother was on the team taking it to Europe. Sage's heart lurched. He'd been one of the last few to see her alive. Did you know what she was carrying? I knew it was special, that's about all. His reveal, for all the potential it had, only served to give them more questions. Gray appeared to be struggling for something more to offer, but he had nothing. Look, I was nosy. I asked a few too many questions. I tried to chat people up who were transporting it, and I got assigned newbie training as a result. If nothing else, his new information gave the group something more to do than squabble. For a few moments, silence fell over the room. Sage should have been thinking about the weapon, but all she could see was her mother's face. How had it been? Miranda was the best. Why would anyone have turned her? She couldn't have been a party to the deaths. Terrors weren't able to use magic. Had she been aware of what was going on, or the weapon that was stolen out from under her nose? Questions she might never get an answer to. When it passed through the Las Vegas office, were there any disputes? Devin asked. Like I said, I don't know. We had it here for about a week. There were lots of closed-door meetings, but when I got nosy, they assigned me all the shit details to keep me away from the office, Gray replied. Well, clearly it was used during that time, Sylvia reminded the group. A whole bunch of vampires were destroyed. But not by A.S.S.E.T, Gray pointed out. Terras can't use it if it's magic. No one said anything about Terras, Sylvia snarled back. She had a point, but it still didn't seem feasible to have someone from another branch of magic handling it. Sage added her thoughts. But if someone else tried to use it, they'd just as easily be drained of their powers, wouldn't they? Don't make assumptions about things you don't understand. Sylvia seemed to have a response for everything that made her or Gray look bad. Sage bit back an angry reply, choosing to let others with presumably more knowledge than her take the heat. Do we know for certain that the weapon made it to the European archives? Nix asked. If she went, she never returned alive, Sage said in a reverent whisper, her hands instinctively reaching for the necklace her mom had given her. She clutched it tightly, hoping to feel some part of her mother still with her. But I would guess, based on what happened next, that the team never made it off the ground. Her mother was made a darkling, Devin translated. Sage has had a rude awakening. Nix fluttered close to Sage. I'm sorry, dear. Not as much as I am. It's how I got mixed up in all this. Sage sucked in a deep breath to get a hold of her emotions, fumbling idly with the pendant, letting her fingers trace the tree's design. So we must work under the assumption that the weapon is a seed, and its last known place of record is here in our city, but we still don't know how it was used and by whom. Karn brought everyone back on point. We need details about what happened. Where's the seed? Was it here? Where did it go? Who's guarding it? Devin listed the questions on his finger. That's in-house stuff for you Terras to figure out. Gray nodded. We also need to know more about this seed. Are there any records of it being used in the past? What are the properties? How is the magic activated? Devin pointed to Karn. Do you have any other books pertaining to the old myths? You're welcome to my library. Join me for a look. Karn bowed his head. And what am I supposed to do? Sylvia asked. We need information, or better yet, witnesses, Devin replied. I'm to be a spy then? She huffed, but didn't reject the idea outright. Sylvia, you hold a unique position at the Sortilege Agency. With many of the classes that you interact with, there is no one better suited to locate witnesses. Devin spoke with unquestioning authority. And Nix, your contacts on the Strip will help us keep a finger on the pulse of traffic in and out of our city. If anyone can find a witness, I'll bet it's one of you two. Devin challenged Nix and Sylvia, each with a nod, as if inspiring them to be the first to find the answer. We must find out what happened to this weapon, Karn added. Because if it is still out there, it is our people that are at risk. More attacks will happen. The Great War could return, with 4 combatants this time. What would the mother resort to then? Phoenix reported an attack not too long ago, Sage offered, as a new piece of information, though she wasn't quite sure how it fit into the puzzle. It sounds like someone is following a trail, Nix added. I wonder if the European archive has been attacked too. I can try and look into that, Gray replied. How did you know about Phoenix? Devon asked. For the first time, it seemed Sage knew something the other people didn't. Well, Mark was like a second father to me, she shrugged, downplaying the connection that she had with him. Sorensen? Gray asked. He's got very high-level access. Might be useful to contact him. If you can trust him, Sylvia snorted. He is a Terra after all. He's good people, Sage said. I've known him my whole life. But did you know what he was? Sylvia threw her doubts slyly, as if trying to plant seeds of her own to create more animosity. No, but he was the one to care for me when my mom was out on missions. Sage wasn't stupid enough to fall for her weak attempt. Protecting the next generation is the duty of Terras, she scoffed. You were just another mission, a job that needed doing. No wonder the Shade's got a bad name. Sylvia grated on her nerves almost as badly as Gray, but knowing this, she held her tongue. The Terra's oath replayed in her mind. Temperance and mercy and patience. She couldn't afford to let Sylvia get under her skin, especially if they needed her to scour the dark places and bring back useful information. Duty or not, Mark loved her like a father. Even when she acted horribly towards him, he still did his best to guide her with patience. We'll have to bring you back in under the guise of changing your mind, Gray said, as more of an order than an offer of how to get Sage back into A.S.S.E.T. Time to go kiss Ava's royal ass, and when you return, you'll follow my lead. One way or another, Sage knew she'd end up back at that place. But did it have to be with Gray as her partner? That's the end of that chapter. So, a little bit more information learned, a little bit more on the history, some clues as to the weapon, what it could be, what its use could possibly be. And of course, like I said, every week I'll ask you, who do we think the villain is? You have met pretty much everyone by now. So, let's go to the chat room here and see who's all here. Hello, Regine. Yes, this is my TARDIS sweater. I absolutely love this. It's one of my favorites. And now that it's nice and chilly, I get to wear it all the time, which I absolutely love. Had to reload twice before it would start playing. Uh-oh. And you're watching on Facebook. You know, I've had a lot of problems watching the streams on Facebook when they're live. I have a lot easier time watching them over on YouTube. So I'm wondering if there's some kind of a weird glitch or quirk going on with Facebook streaming. Oh, thank you. I'm glad it's your favorite part of Sunday too. It really is for me. And I was having a really bad day today, so I was looking forward to being able to come and chat with you guys and read and trip over my own tongue and have people laugh at me as I laugh at myself. And yes, the cat, the annoying cat, he is demanding attention. He's still screaming in the background right now. He's got food, he's got water. I don't know what he wants right now. Loud and clear. Yes. One of these days, Katie's going to understand why I drink reading out loud. I would probably choke if I tried to take a drink. Let's be honest here. Let's seriously, you know me. If I tried to take a drink while reading, I would probably choke. And then I would have like a 20-minute coughing fit live on air. Wouldn't that be entertaining? Gray, what? That jerk he is. He's such a jerk. I really hope Sage punches him. Punch him in the nose. I can talk. I can read. Yep. And you know what? Laugh along with me because you know I'm laughing at myself. I dislike Gray more and more. He's such an asshole. 18? Oh my goodness. Yeah, well, that's fine. Maybe next time I'll beat it. I'm going to make it a challenge now. Instead of being all, depressed about how I can't read as good as you, Rebecca, I'm going to make it a challenge. I'm going to trip over my tongue 20 times next time. I don't know if that's the goal I should be going for. I would probably choke, nearly snorts coffee out my nose. See? That's... Although it might provide a lot of entertainment value, so I don't know. What do we need to do to get some more views here? Author stupidity for the week. All right, so for those of you watching who have not read, Rebecca, I know you have read. Regine, I don't think you have read. So, who do we think the villain is at this point? Any guesses? Setting a new goal. Right? We gotta have goals. Whether or not they're good ones, but we gotta have goals, something to work for. So next time, 20 flubs. Wait till I start reading from my new book. The teasers that I've sent you already, Rebecca, on the funny titles for some of my chapter headings will be very interesting to try and read out loud. Oh, now we think it's someone in the Phoenix office. Well, does that mean it's Mark? Because we really haven't met anyone in the Phoenix office other than Mark. So could he? Interesting thought. Interesting thought. Yes, you do. And that reminds me, I need to order some copies. I have hardbounds in books 1, 2, and 3, which I need to reorder, so I'm completely out of those. And I have book 1, and I think I have book 3 and 4 in paperback, so I need to order book 2 because I'm completely out of book 2s. So I do need to make an order. And, probably it won't be for the Christmas season because I won't get them in time. But maybe for the start of the new year, I may have to order some books and do a bundle sale or something. And then, of course, the new book, too, when it comes out, I do need to get that in print. And I'm debating on whether or not I'm going to do 2 versions of it because there's a lot of good information at the back of the book that could also work as kind of worksheets. So I don't know if I'm going to do a book with the workbook or if I'm going to just provide a downloadable workbook for anybody who buys the book that they can just download and use the pages, things like the beat sheets and the quick reference cheat sheets for word swaps and other stuff that's going to be in there. There's lots of goodies in that book, but you and I will have a conversation about that. And the goblin she spotted. Yes, she did spot him, but we were never introduced to him. So it would be unfair of me to throw a villain at you that you have not actually been introduced to. So that's pretty much the only clue I would give somebody is it has somebody that you have been introduced to, and you have been introduced to pretty much everybody at this point in the story. So somebody that you have met is the villain. And by the end of it, you'll know for sure. I've been waiting. What have you been waiting on? What do I owe you? I just sent you a new section to edit, Rebecca. Yes, Katie. Twisty plots. Yes, it'd be a good twist. It's Mark. Come at me. Ooh, Joe, he's calling you out. Where is Joe today? I don't see him in the chat room. Ooh, naughty Joe. A magic user in the office. Well, we have established that there are some people of other magical origins that do work with an asset. We'll see. Chekhov's comet is the green herring. That's beautiful. All right. And on that note, I think we will end the show for today. We're at 43 minutes, which is a bit longer than normal. I will see you guys next week with some more chapter reads as we get closer and closer to the big finale. Thank you again for watching. I hope everybody is having a good time heading into this holiday season. Spend some time with your family. As always, do something to take time for yourself and make yourself happy. Self-care is important. I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you so much for